Hey everybody, Spooky Marshmallow here, and today our Scream Queen is Susan Cabot. And my, did she have a juicy life. So let's get into this actress's life because it is messed up, let me tell you. So just an overall brief summary before we dive into the juiciness. Susan Cabot was actually born Harriet Pearl Shapiro on July 9th, 1927, and she died brutally December 10th, 1986. She was an American film, stage, and television actress. She rose to prominence for her roles in a variety of Western films, but she also served a contract with Universal Pictures in the mid 1950s. She returned to performing in theater in New York in the 50s as well. She subsequently returned to Hollywood in the later part of the decade and appeared in a series of Roger Corman films such as Sorority Girl, War of the Satellites, Machine Gun Kelly, and the film that I know her from, The Wasp Woman. Cabot spent the following 2 decades largely in seclusion, though she did appear in off-Broadway theater in the early 1960s and made a 1970 television appearance on the series Bracken's World. By the 1980s, Cabot was suffering from severe mental illness, including depression, suicidal thoughts, and irrational phobias. On December 10th, 1986, Cabot's only child, 22-year-old Timothy Roman, bludgeoned her to death in their LA home with a weightlifting bar after Cabot purportedly awoke in a panicked state and attacked him. Roman, who had dwarfism and suffered pituitary gland problems, pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 3 years probation for his matricide. So let's talk about her early life. From 1927 to 1946. Cabot was born Harriet Pearl Shapiro on July 9th, 1927, to a Jewish family in Boston. She led an early life filled with turmoil. After her father abandoned their family, Cabot's mother, Elizabeth, was institutionalized, leaving Cabot orphaned. She was subsequently raised in 8 different foster homes. She spent the majority of her early life in the New York City borough of the Bronx. It was revealed that, while in foster care, Cabot suffered emotional and sexual abuse, which triggered intense PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Cabot attended high school in Manhattan and found employment as an illustrator of children's books. She supplemented her income by working as a singer, performing at the Village Barn Club in Manhattan. She married her first husband, artist Martin Sacker, on July 30th, 1944, in Washington, D.C. Sacker was a childhood friend, and the marriage presented Cabot with an opportunity to leave foster care. And I should mention that she was actually still a minor when she married him. Cabot made her film debut in 20th Century Fox's film noir, Kiss of Death, which was filmed in New York, playing a bit part as a restaurant patron. She was subsequently spotted performing at the Village Barn by a talent scout for Columbia Pictures, who cast her in On the Isle of Samoa. This role led to further Hollywood roles, with Cabot signing a contract with Universal Pictures. Her first film with the studio was the 1951 Western Tomahawk. The same year, Cabot divorced her husband, Sacker, and was subsequently romantically linked with King Hussein of Jordan for several years. By 1957, she had returned to LA and resumed a filming career for Roger Corman, including Carnival Rock, Sorority Girl, The Viking Women and the Sea Serpent, War of Satellites, Machine Gun Kelly. In that same year, which was 1957, she had a lead role in the Western Fort Massacre opposite Joel McCrea. Cabot's final film role was in Corman's horror film The Wasp Woman, which came out in 1959. Good movie. Speaking on her work with Corman, Cabot recalled it as, quote, totally mad. It was like a European movie, unquote. Though she stated that Corman was, quote, some kind of maverick. He's very bright and fast thinking." Unquote. All right, now let's talk about her life from between 1960 to 1986. Cabot bore her only child, a son, in 1964. In 1968, she married her second husband, Michael Roman, with whom she raised her son, Timothy Scott Roman, before again divorcing in 1983. In the last years of her life, Cabot suffered from depression and suicidal thoughts and was prey to a wide range of irrational, powerful fears. She was under a licensed psychologist's care, but the psychologist found her so troubled and ill that the sessions became emotionally draining. Cabot became increasingly unable to care for herself. The interior of her home was littered with years of trash and spoiled food lay everywhere. In late 1986, Cabot's mental health deteriorated significantly. Despite the squalor of the home's interior, Cabot still maintained an adequate income despite having retired from acting, largely due to real estate investments and her fascination with vintage cars, that is, which she regularly acquired, restored, and resold. On December the 10th, 1986, Cabot's 22-year-old son, Timothy Scott Roman, beat her to death in her home in the Encino neighborhood of L.A. with a weightlifting bar. He was charged with second-degree murder. At the trial, Roman testified that his mother had awakened him while screaming, not recognizing him even, and calling for her mother, Elizabeth. When he attempted to call emergency services, she attacked him with a bar, and a scalpel. Roman seized the bar from her and beat her repeatedly on the head. He then hid the bar and scalpel and told police that a man in a ninja mask had killed his mother, believing no one would ever believe his story about her mental illness. Roman's defense attorneys claimed their client's aggressive reaction to his mother's attack was due to the drugs he took to counteract his dwarfism and pituitary gland problems. As part of treatments for his, I hope I say this correctly, Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease? At the close of the trial, prosecutors changed the charge to involuntary manslaughter, as no evidence had been presented at trial to support premeditation, which is required for a murder conviction. Superior Court Judge Darlene E. Schemp deliberated 10 minutes and then convicted Roman of involuntary manslaughter. Roman, who had already spent 2.5 years in jail, was sentenced to 3 years probation on November 28, 1989. Wow. So this poor woman suffered all kinds of trauma, even from, being a child, in and out of foster care, etc., etc., only to spend her adult life in deep depression and suicidal thoughts and PTSD and all kinds of crazy things, only to be beaten to death by her only child. How crazy is that? And then the son only receives probation for 3 years for killing his mother. How insane is that? This poor woman just lived a completely tormented life. But in my book, that makes her a scream queen. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Spooky Marshmallow. Please like and subscribe. And remember, stay spooky, my friends.